Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Adventurers Guild, and I just wrapped up a video on the werewolves in Palmyra, Maine. If you didn't catch that episode, be sure to watch it. It was an incredible story. However, this one is one that I grew up with as a child hearing about, and every time we would get in the vehicle and we'd go out 4x4ing out into the mountains, I would always keep my eyes open for the secret entrance to this wondrous fantasy land full of riches. Now, where did this story originate from? Well, it came from a legal document that was filed by a gentleman named Earl Dorr. Earl Dorr was born in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and growing up he had these three friends, Buck, Oliver, and George Pacer. When they grew up, all four of them ended up in California, but in two different locations. By some miraculous event, Earl bumped into Buck and Oliver, and he asked them, "Hey, where's George at?" And they began to tell him of the tragic death of their brother, but this most wondrous story and how they became filthy rich. So it just so happened that the three brothers were exploring the California desert near the Nevada border on a mountain called Kokoweef Peak. And while they were there, they found a cave that was concealed naturally by the environment. And they went into this cave and they noticed it had gone back a long distance. They went back to town, they gathered all this equipment, and they went out to this cave and explored it for days. And they told Earl that they came upon a canyon, and this canyon dropped about a half-mile deep. When they got to the bottom of the canyon, there was a river that flowed, and they followed it for miles and miles and miles. They have no idea how far it went. So this river had a tide, and when the tide was high, the river would expand to about 300 feet wide. When the tide was low, the river dropped down and it narrowed to about only 10 feet wide. On each side of the river was this rich black sand, and the sand ranged anywhere from 12 feet deep to 4 foot deep, and they said on average it was about 8 foot deep. Now, inside this black sand, it was loaded with gold nuggets and gold flakes. So the brothers went back to town. They bought lumber and built this large sluice box, and they brought a hand pump with them. And so they ran a pipe down into the water, hooked it up to the pump, and they began pumping the pump and working the sluice box, and they did this for 3 weeks. After 3 weeks of working this black sand, they pulled out 2,700 troy ounces of gold, which is 196 pounds. And in today's currency, that would be $5.1 million in 3 weeks. There's no telling how rich the brothers would have been if tragedy hadn't befallen them. It just so happened that their brother George decided he wanted to take a dip into the river, and the water was freezing cold. He got up on a ledge and he dove off into the water, and he hit a rock. It killed him instantly. This ended their mining expedition, and they took their brother and their gold and they left. The Pacer brothers never returned to the cave, and no reason was given why. However, they shared in detail with Earl how to find it. So Earl gets funding, and he goes out to the cave with a civil engineer from Los Angeles named John Edward Morton. They brought 3 important pieces of equipment with them. They brought a pedometer, which helped determine how far they were walking. They brought an altimeter, which told them the elevation they were at in the cave. And then they also brought a theodolite that they could use to measure the distance of things that they couldn't reach. So after their expedition, Earl went to the courthouse and filed a legal affidavit swearing that he was telling the truth about the cave, and this is what he described that the cave was like. From the mouth of the cave, they descended down about 2,000 feet till they came to a canyon, and it dropped another 3,000. Along the way down, there were several ledges, and the ledges were each 10 to 40 feet wide. They traveled one of the ledges down about 8 miles, and all the way down the ledge, it was covered in that black sand with the gold in it. So they traveled down one ledge about 8 miles, and when they got to the end of this 8 miles, they saw the cave just continued on and on and on. However, they picked up 10 pounds of sand off the ledge and took it back with them. The cave splintered off in all different directions, with different chambers and passageways going every which direction you can think of. They were all filled with stalactites and stalagmites, and in his own words, he said that there were many grotesque and fantastic shapes that would make this cave one of the wonders of the world. There's giant chambers and passageways completely encrusted with crystals of every different color. And some of these had crystals that were the size of like telephone poles and such going through them. At one point, we would have considered this to have been a complete fabrication and not possible. However, in Mexico, they have found a cave that has crystals like the ones he describes. And here's some pictures of those crystals. The formation that seemed to impress Earl and John the most, though, was the stalactite that was completely covered in crystals, and it dropped from the ceiling and went 1,500 feet down into the canyon. They said it was at least 27 feet in diameter and constantly had water flowing down it, and then at the end it would come rushing off like a waterfall and drop into the river below. After exploring the cave 8 miles in, and getting concerned about supplies, they decided to play it safe and to turn around and start heading back. After Earl and John left the cave, they went and purchased some dynamite and blasted the cave closed until they could get funding to go back and start an operation extracting the gold from the cave. So if you recall, we talked about how Earl, at the end of the 8 miles, had collected 10 pounds of that black sand and brought it back with him. Now, he panned 7 out of that 10 pounds, and out of the 7 pounds that he panned, he was able to extract 1/3 of a pound of gold out of it. Neither Earl nor John ever had any children. However, Earl had a nephew named Ray that he would take with him out to Kokoweef, and they would look over and over and over trying to find the entrance that he had blasted closed. However, after all the rains and the sands and everything that came down, Earl was never able to relocate the entrance ever again. Earl's nephew Ray wasn't quite sure if the story was ever true or not, and as time went on, it seems he began to doubt his uncle's story more and more. Today, major operations are taking place at Kokoweef trying to locate the cavern. One company is punching holes all over around Kokoweef trying to locate the cavern. And from there, they'll dig a tunnel down to it and then begin extracting the gold. And as far as I know, you can buy shares in these companies. However, if you want to go on an adventure of your own, as far as I know, Kokoweef is open to the public to explore and investigate. As always, if you explore the area, be sure to tell us about your experience in the comments below. Also, if you post a video about it on YouTube, be sure to tell us the name of your channel and the name of the video so that we can help direct traffic to your channel. That's going to do it for this episode. Be sure to click on that logo to subscribe or watch one of these videos. And until next time, we're off on another adventure. God bless.